Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah and today we're going to be taking a look at this very special knife. This is the CKF FIF23. That's FIF23. This is a collaboration between Philippe Jourget and Custom Knife Factory. This normally is basically the exact same knife, different steel type. I think he uses CPM 154 on his custom knives. This is the exact same model, just produced by CKF instead of by Jourget himself. Let's get into our traditional size comparisons. We've got our Spyderco PM2 and our Spyderco Para 3. Now, the first thing you'll realize is this knife is gigantic. The blade length is coming in at a whopping 3.98 inches or 101 millimeters, so just under 4 inches. Very large knife. This is kind of CKF's thing. They love big knives. The thickness is only 0.14 inches or 3.5 millimeters, which is actually quite thin for such a large knife. That's good. I really don't like it when you have gigantic thick knives. This is an example of a knife that is just too darn thick for a lot of people. I'm kind of putting up with it for now, toying with the idea of a regrind on this knife, but ultimately it cuts and it's not really for slicing, and I just kind of know what I'm getting into. So this is more like a 4 millimeter stock thickness as opposed to the 3.5 inch millimeter. So that's kind of what the knife is up against in terms of its traditional competition. The closest and most similar knife is another knife from Custom Knife Factory, the Suhoi 3. This is one of my favorite knives. I got this earlier in the year. Ended up being really, really awesome. I lent it to Nick Shabast to review. He even liked it, even though he's not really a big fan of big knives. But it's hard to deny just how fantastic this knife is. So we've got another kind of contestant here. You've got the CKF logo on both these suckers. Both are 4-inch knives. Will the FIF23 by Jourget outplay the Suhoi, or will the Suhoi stay on top? Stay tuned to find out. Before we get into the dent, let's do a quick weigh-in so we know what we're working with here. This is a big knife, also a heavy knife. Online it says 6.66 ounces. I'm glad to see that I don't have one of the demonic versions. So that's always, heartwarming. Okay, with the objective stuff out of the way, let's get into the dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First off, in the decent, I love the placement of the logos. This is Philippe Jourget's little logo. If you look closely, obviously that's a P and a J, but from a distance, it just kind of looks like a little Aztec triangle symbol or something. It's really classy. I like its logo. I like the placement of it. It looks like the little shoulder here is kind of carved out to make room for it. It's completely off the blade and out of the cutting path. Similarly, on the opposite side, you have the CKF logo in the exact same spot. That's also extremely tactful. I love that placement. And then for the steel, I do enjoy it when they have it labeled, and they do just at the bottom of the knife. Clearly, this is extremely legible. M390, and then this is number 254 out of all the knives that they're making. This knife is going to be kind of hard to get. I'm releasing the video right now because even though this is sold out on CKF's website, From Russia with Knives, they are about to go to Blade Show, and from what I understand, they have a bunch of these to sell at Blade Show. So if you're at Blade Show and you're quickly trying to figure out if you should buy this knife or not, hopefully this review will help you make that decision. Next positive thing here is the blade finish. This is just a really nice satin finish on this M390 blade. It's got the nice, I prefer horizontal grind lines as opposed to vertical ones. Something like Brian Nadeau does the vertical ones, and it's totally subjective, but I just prefer the horizontal ones. It seems a little bit more in line with the shape of the knife and the lines. This is really nice. Now, I will tell you right now, it's in the good, it's not in the excellent, because I prefer the finish on the Suhoi 3. It's a similar finish to this like bead blast polished type thing that is on the Shirogorov knives. I think this finish is just a little bit better than that. A lot of the Wii knives are getting a similar treatment to this. This is really nice. This is, probably my third favorite finish, behind this being my favorite, and then kind of a polished stonewash being my second, and then just normal satin being third. So very nice. It's very good. Not the very, very best, but still, there's a much longer list of blade finishes I don't like. Next thing I want to point out is the jimping. The jimping's doing double duty here. It's both the front flipper kind of opening aperture, which I'll go in detail about later. But in terms of actually using the knife, the jimping is much more grabby than what they put on the Suhoi. So that's one kind of in the point for the FIF23. This looks the same, but it is way less grabby. I mean, it's basically rounded and not nearly as effective. You can kind of see how sharp those are compared. When you get really close, you can kind of tell. Bunch of human remains in there. This one, I don't think it could collect it, even if I was a brittle old man. Another interesting thing on here is the clip. The clip is kind of a contrasting color, anodized titanium to match the liners, which is kind of classy. It gives it, just a little bit of that bronze contrast with the pivots, the etch, and then the aforementioned liner locks. Kind of tie the whole package together, kind of the golden bronze look, or the golden gray look almost. It's a very muted gold or bronze color here, but I really like it aesthetically. The clip itself is really, really practical. 2 screws, it's not going anywhere. It's not incredibly deep carry, but it does go up enough to where it's not an issue. Percentage-wise, considering it's such a big knife, it's not that bad. The clip has plenty of ramp to it. You can see it's chamfered on all sides, and it's not a ergonomic issue whatsoever. It's actually really nice. Cool thing is they gave us a second clip in the box, which is cool. So even if that one gets dinged up, you can just throw another one on there. Another positive thing I really like is the placement of the lanyard post. So not a lanyard hole, it's just kind of a indent little outcropping here with the post in it. A lot of knives are doing this these days. You have Shirogorov, you have the Suhoi, you have the French design here, are all kind of doing a similar thing. I think that's a much better thing, to just kind of hole punching something right where it kind of ruins the lines of the knife, often displaces the clip, and this is a good solution for it for the people that want to throw a lanyard on there. I think that's great. Another thing I like, and this is true of many bolster locks, which this is having it be a liner lock and having the bolster there. It protects you from, when you're trying to close the knife, of putting pressure on the lock bar and making it difficult to disengage the knife. I'll go in detail of that experience here in a little bit, but overall, just the fact that you can grip it from pretty much anywhere and you're not going to affect action negatively is awesome. From an aesthetic thing, I do like the Zirconium bolsters and backspacer. These are kind of a nice touch. They pick up fingerprints like crazy, but when you clean them off, you can really tell. It just kind of makes the knife pop. It gives it that really premium feel. So if light's coming off of it, it looks like it's much brighter. If you look directly at it, it's just, a very dark gray, kind of a muted black almost. Really, really, really classy, really well executed here on the actual fit and finish of the Zirconium on the knife. Zirconium is heavy, so it's not all upside, but I think the execution of it in this knife, I think definitely fits the overall aesthetic and kind of intention of the knife, and kind of ties the whole design together in a really nice way. Another thing I like is the CF. This is the normal, just kind of twill CF version. They had a very limited run of the marbled carbon fiber scales. Exact same knife, that was the only difference, and you could just pop the scales on or off. I noticed on the website from Russia with Knives, they were taking pre-orders for I think $85-ish to just order some scales, some marbled carbon fiber scales on their website, and they'll just send them to you. So if you want to be able to slap them on, I think that's really cool that they're giving you the option to do that in case, you know, they ran out of the marbled carbon fiber version knife and you felt kind of like, I don't know if I want to buy this if that's not really what I want. And now you can have both if you'd like. That's pretty cool. I will say, minor nitpick is that when the Suhoi shipped to me, they gave me 2 sets included in that price, the normal twill version carbon fiber and the marble for the same price. That's awesome. They kind of spoiled us a little bit on the Suhoi, but still, I mean, a lot of knives aren't even giving you the option to do, you know, a secondary one for, you know, that cheap. Last decent thing I want to talk about before we get into the excellent is the fit and finish / milling. There is some milling inside the knife here. Let's see if I can give us some illumination. There you go. You can see some good milling on both sides, actually. If they didn't do the milling, this sucker would be a beefcake. I mean, remember, we're at like about 6.66 ounces, and it would have been much worse, probably over 7 ounces if they didn't do that milling. So when you get into the knife, you can see that everything is extraordinarily well milled out, very clean, very well-defined cuts. In general, the fit and finish is spot on. The knife is perfectly centered. There is no voids or mistakes in the CF, in the Zirconium. When I got the Suhoi, there was just a little nick right on the end of this Zirconium backspacer. When I got the knife, that was not me that put that little nick on there. It was just in the box that way, which is kind of disappointing. This one, I'm happy to report, came basically perfect. So even opening it up out of the box, this was a much cleaner knife when I got into it, where there's a lot of muck and grime on the inside of this one. So it seems to me like their quality control, their fit and finish, you know, is being a little bit more paid attention to in the past, and I think that's a good thing. All right, now we're going to get into the excellent, and we can hype this up a little bit. I've got 4 things in the excellent. Starting off with OCD, which is already kind of a 3-parter. We've got the open, the close, and the disengage, and I'm happy to report that all 3 of these make it into the excellent. So let's go through the gambit. I'm a action nerd. I know a lot of people don't care as much about this kind of stuff as I do, but you know, if you do, then this is the place to be, because you're trying to decide if you want to spend, you know, $600 or not. So open. It's a front flipper knife. It's a front flipper knife, and this is your only way to really open the knife. I mean, I guess you can do like a normal pinch grip type style, but this is the traditional way. And as I mentioned earlier, the jimping is, you know, pretty good. It can grab on, and it's just high enough. I wouldn't mind if there was one more little nick right there, but it's definitely not necessary by any means. So all it takes, and there's different ways to do this. I've been flipping this sucker in 5,000 different ways. You could do just kind of like the normal one where you do it up here, kind of at the hinge of your thumb. That's fine. I found it to be a little bit more consistent and easy on my thumb, if I just go straight back with my thumb. This gives you a little bit better grip on the knife. You're not holding it kind of temporarily. When you flip your hand here, the knife is just kind of ready to drop out of your hand. You know, if you were, you know, sweaty or get jostled at the wrong time, you could, you know, drop the knife. So I think having it this way prevents that situation from happening. It's not going to leave your hand under those types of circumstances, and I think that's a lot safer. You could do it with 0 wrist. It fires open like a mad dog. I mean, this is awesome. So extremely snappy. The detent is, I would say, about where the Paisan's detent is. So if you're doing light shakes and stuff like that, it's not going to come out. If I really kind of heel kick it, I can get the knife to fling out from gravity, but I'm kind of giving it my all with the flip. Normal shakes, it's not going to do that. I would say even the Paisan is probably a little bit worse than that. where I have to do the heel kick on this one in order to get it open. And so I think it's been perfectly dialed for the front flipper. It just, if it was a little bit harder, it might snap open a little bit without having to just move so quick. But I think it's pretty much perfect because you can do it 100 times and you're not going to wear out your thumb or your fingers doing it this way. Where when you go from the side like I was doing before, you're going to rub your finger raw right here. Where this just, it doesn't do that. It's running right on the pad of your thumb, and it's not kind of scraping in the same direction or way. So opening is incredibly satisfying. It's so easy, and it's broken in a little bit since I have the knife, but really it was good out of the box. I mean, of course it's going to get better with time, but still, this is amazing. Now, Disengage. And I think I care about Disengage a lot more than most people, again. But again, I want to go through the whole gambit. I want to open, close, disengage over and over and over and over. That's just my thing. And if one of those three things holds me up, then I don't fidget with the knife, and its value to me decreases. Not to say it's worthless to me. I still appreciate knives and all the other aspects, but that's my favorite aspect of a knife. Here we got a lot of really awesome things going on with the Disengage. First off, we could see the liner lock from the show side. That's always a good sign. It means you can come in horizontally more often than not, and you're not having to jam in vertically and then push over while the meat of your thumb is kind of pinched together. This is extraordinarily easy access. I mean, it's just, not only is it this cutout right here so I could see the liner lock, but you also have this giant, cutout, not even a chamfer, just cutout, so that I have even more room. I mean, I could like slither along the side and cup it. So it gives you a tremendous easy access to get in there. I see how the chamfer goes all the way up to the top, as high as they could go before it runs into the steel liner lock. That gives me maximum leverage. A lot of knives don't do that, and it baffles me. The smallest, little, tiniest detail can make or break that experience, and this is amazing. Steel insert, so 0 lock stick, and then incredibly, I mean, look how quick I can... This is the best Disengage I've ever experienced on any knife. Hands down. Bar none. Amazing. All right, so what about the detent ball ramp? Now, usually I'm a stickler for detent ball ramps because I don't like the hop. So if I disengage the liner lock and I get the detent ball bumping into the tang of the blade, it'll hold the blade up. Now, normally I don't like this because if I try to shake it, it like bounces on that detent ball and will half the time open back up. And that's really annoying. Here, I can put it on that detent ball and just the smallest little jostle. I don't even have to do that. There. That's all it takes. I know it's hard to focus on this kind of rapid thing here. But the cool thing is, if I just want to skip that jump altogether, I barely have to go a little tiny bit further. And again, that's not hard because that liner lock is so easy to just open all the way up. I can just open it up so that I skip the jump altogether if I want to, without having to like push really hard on the lock bar. So when the detent ball is on the tang of the blade, completely free fall. I mean, I can basically go, so I'm completely flat, right? And then I'm just going to churn the knife up, and then probably at, 70 degrees is enough for the blade to completely fall shut. That is amazing. I mean, if I go straight 90 degrees, it's going to guillotine shut really easily. No problem. But if you want to control that speed at which you're going, you can kind of do it at a different angle. Normally a knife is just not going to go. I mean, even the Suhoi, if I get the detent ball on the tang of the blade and I'm lifting, I'm now 90%, it's still not falling. I have to give it a jostle before it wants to move. And this is awesome action. So this is 0 encouragement. I mean, you get the tang on the blade, the detent ball on the tang of the blade, and even just a little bit, not even 90%, and it's going to completely fall shut. Amazing close. The best close of any knife I've ever experienced. And I just did a video where I was featuring the action of, the Grimsmo Norseman. I have the Trevor Berger LEXK, which falls really nicely. But again, I have to do that initial jostle to get it to go down. That's previously was the best of any knife I've ever experienced. The Norseman will fall once I get the detent ball onto the tang of the blade, but I have to push the blade so far before that happens, it kind of ruins the fun for me because it's such a hard jump onto the detent ball ramp, where this is not. I mean, it basically instantly does it, so it's an earlier, situation, and if I want to skip that part, I can by just pushing on the lock bar to skip that jump. This is one of those situations where I actually don't want a detent ball ramp because the knife would just be downright dangerous. Like, I'm already realizing like how quickly it just falls that sometimes I'm like, get out of the way. Like, it's that quick and fall shutty. I mean, it is amazing. Like, I don't have to do any coaxing whatsoever, and it just drop shuts. Oh man. So the entire OCD is perfect. All three aspects. I mean, this is a gigantic knife, and I'm running through the paces here. So that's pretty cool. And if you're worried about it falling on you, you can kind of control the fall from the top. So I wouldn't say, oh no, I don't want it falling on me, I'm gonna get cut. Like, you can actually perfectly control that, and then like I just let go and it falls. So there's ways to kind of manage the negatives of it being that incredibly fall shutty. So overall, I think it's perfect. There's not a single thing I would change about the open, the close, or the disengage. Awesome. 10 out of 10 for all three. All right, next excellent thing here, and I'm combining these two, is the ergonomics and then the what I'm calling just premium feel. So I really like the double cutout here. Enough room for two fingers, and then this kind of butt of the knife naturally forms into the palm swell. And so it makes me feel, I get that pinch grip where my fingers are kind of close, the thing I've always talked about on a knife that I like, where you have it pretty close as you can get to the pivot, but still have your index finger and your thumb be as close together as possible, right? And it makes the knife feel like it's an extension of your hand. And this does that. If it was just a straight line here, it would just feel so big and unwieldy. But because I'm nestled in, I feel like I have incredible control. The jimping lands exactly where you want it to. It's a huge knife, but man, is it comfortable. It fills hand just like it should. I have medium-sized hands. I think it might be a little bit awkward for somebody with small hands, but usually you're not looking for 4-inch knives if you have small hands. So I think most of us are going to be safe with medium to extra large. You're going to have plenty of room left over. Nothing's jabbing into me. This you think might be pokey, but it's not. It completely misses you, so it's not poking into anything. Yeah, amazing. And then the premium feel part of it is just how sturdy everything is. The action, the smoothness of the action is just, buttery smooth. I do not even know how just they managed to achieve such an amazing feel immediately. Usually a knife would have to be broken in over years to be this smooth. So everything just fits together. It feels kind of like you're holding a knife carved out of a Cadillac or something, like in their heyday. More like a Bugatti. It's like a Bugatti and a knife. Blah. It's just amazing. So, A+. Next excellent point is the cutting prowess. Knives should cut. How does this cut? fantastically. All right, so we've got some knives here that, you know, tend to be the knives I reach for if I'm gonna like be cutting in the kitchen. I've been trying to justify not getting this knife reground or selling it because slicing is just such a chore with this knife, but I've definitely been trying. Cutting cheese is really ugh. But the other knives, these are the 3 go-tos I do if I need to slice things. Spidey Chef is awesome. It's really thin behind the edge and, you know, starting stock thickness. So since we have, you know, such a high grind here, I mean, we're talking, you know, over 1.25 inches of height, and you're starting at 3.5 millimeters, which is better than, you know, this one and about the same as these two. That's quite impressive. And you can see that the bevel on this thing is basically a micro bevel, similar to what the Vanex and the Suhoi 3 have. And it just, it's a slicing beast. It's a behemoth. I mean, it's just so thin behind the edge, about 20 thousandths behind the edge. And it just is so nice to cut with. I really can't tell you how pleased I am with the thickness on the knife and the grind. It's so good. As far as like the tip goes, it's, you know, for a big knife, kind of dainty, I suppose, because it does have a pretty steady distal taper to the point. So I wouldn't be prying with this, but I wouldn't do that anyway. As far as actually, you know, cutting through boxes, cutting through food, processing, you know, proteins, that kind of thing, it's a champ. And to top it all off, it's got M390 blade steel, which is better than Jourget's custom, which is CPM 154, which I'm sure for him to work on is a lot easier, but for the end user, M390 is going to be the better option in almost every case over CPM 154. So it cost a third the price, and in some ways, I think it's just downright better. And speaking of which, that's my final excellent point here, is just the price. This is coming in at like $560. That's not cheap. It's not an inexpensive knife in the slightest. But again, the customs that, you know, Philippe Jourget's got going are like in the $1,500 to $2,000 range for this basically exact same knife. Obviously, it's handmade by him. The QC is going to be off the charts, and it might have a little bit more, you know, TLC. But overall, I think this has to be an excellent value. If you're in the market for a high-end big knife like this, I don't think you need to look anywhere else. This is fantastic. Really, really, really good. So, you know, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea in terms of size and materials. You know, it might even make some people afraid to use it with the zirconium, but ultimately, I'm going to use this knife, and I'm going to try to get my money's worth out of it. All right, so the knife doesn't come without its nitpicks, and so let's talk about some of these things just so you know what to prepare yourself for. First thing is it's heavy. We saw that at the opening of the knife video, and it is a hefty little chunk in your pocket. Now, the good news is, and I had really put this in the positives or the excellent because I feel like it's more neutral. I think it carries better than you would imagine for such a heavy knife. You don't have the flipper tab hanging off, so that's good. And it's pretty like straight and uniform in terms of, you know, the kind of pocket space it's taking up. It's not, you know, doing anything weird to the geometry of the space in your pocket. So I think those things kind of weigh each other off to where, you know, yes, it's heavy, but it's not terrible. And it's something that I think most people can just, you know, get by with without too much trouble. Next nitpick is the zirconium just being a little bit slippery. I didn't know that zirconium was quite this slippery. I think it, you know, being polished has something to do with it. But I think the only time it really matters is when you're trying to do the opens that I was telling you about before here. Because then if you're grabbing the knife on this side with this finger, that's the one that's going to slip out. And that was kind of making me uncomfortable doing this open because it is so slippery. Once I switched scripts and did the normal one where I'm just pushing back like most people do, I feel a lot more confident about it. But if you're, more of the side thumb flipper instead of the push back thumb flipper, then you better be prepared to realize how slippery that is. Backspacer doesn't really, get affected too much by that being slippery. It's really a non-issue back there. It's mostly just on the bolsters. This next nitpick is one I could have put in the terrible, depending on who you talk to. When the knife is closed, the heel, I'm going to zoom in for this. The heel of the knife is pretty well exposed. So let's get a focus here. So you can see that tip right there. And if I rub my finger, I'm not pushing it. Oh yeah, I'm definitely able to. Here, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit better. There you go. Boop. There it is. So it's not the end of the world, because I feel like if it's in your pocket and you're going in this way, like you could see it right there, like your pinky theoretically could get grazed, but you would really have to jam it in exactly the right spot. I don't know. I mean, if you at least know about this, I don't think you're going to have a problem with it. But I could see somebody getting nipped, over the course of their entire, lives with this knife. It's gonna probably get you once or twice. I think when I go to sharpen it, I'll intentionally just keep that last little fraction of the knife not quite as sharp, just in case, because it doesn't have the same exposure level all the way. It's only that last 0.5% of the blade length. Is that going to be an issue for you? Possibly. Some people you talk to will say that's terrible and something should have been done about that. I don't know. I don't think it would be much for us to just knock that down a little bit. Also, is a possibility, but something you should be aware of for sure. Next nitpick is the fact that if you're going to have any service work done on the knife, it's kind of a pain to have to ship it to Russia. This took many days to get here. It has to go through customs. So if you had to send it in for repair, you're probably going to be without your knife for at least a month. So that's something to think about. On the positive side here, and I kind of talked about the extra clip a little bit, but they did give us extra pivot, extra bearings, some screws. So I think they're kind of, hedging their bets a little bit by just giving us a lot more extra parts so that they don't have to ship them. If you lose a bearing or lose a screw or something along those lines. So it's kind of offset. That's why it's not in the terrible. Otherwise, for somebody that's concerned about service, this could be a major issue. It's just something to be aware of going into it more than anything. I don't think it's the end of the world. Take care of your knives. I don't think you'll have too much of a problem. Last nitpick is, and this is more of commentary on Custom Knife Factory. I've been kind of inadvertently a fanboy of theirs lately. I've reviewed, I think, 3 knives coming out of their factory over there, and I've liked them all quite a lot. But the frustrating thing is, once they sell out of a knife, they might have 1 or 2 batches, but then they're just done, and they move on to the next design. So it's kind of bittersweet. It's almost the equivalent of a sprint run, only instead of just focusing on the steel, it's the whole knife. That you got to buy them when they're available, and then once they're gone, they're gone. I do know, like I mentioned earlier, that these are at Blade Show, but after that, it's totally up in the air on whether or not they're going to do more of these. I hope they will. I think that these sold out pretty quickly, and that might give them enough confidence to just do another batch or 2. So yeah, if you think you can get one, or if you like this knife and you want to get one and you're at Blade Show, do it. For sure, do it. For the terrible section, I don't have anything. I'll do an asterisk saying I can totally see some people being justified in saying that this exposed heel could be terrible. Other than that, the knife is not really deserving of anything terrible other than that. So with that out of the way, let's talk about our conclusions. For the conclusion, I just can't help but compare the knife to 2 other knives that we've kind of gone over the last year and one very recently in the Paisan. These are all kind of in the same vein. You've got a high-end 4-inch blade that kind of screams custom production knives. You know, this is a $1,500 knife normally. This is a $1,500 knife normally. This is a new design just coming out of one of the people that they have designed knives for them. But I think that is, you know, something in line with these other two in terms of features. And, you know, each one has their positives and their negatives. I do think that ultimately the FIF23 is by far my favorite. I think it might even be my favorite knife overall. I need more time with it. Right now, the Trevor Burger is beating it, but I can definitely see me switching my allegiance here over time. It's a big knife. I think if this was the FIF20, which is the smaller version that Jourget makes, I think that has potential to be the perfect knife. A little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, with all the same, you know, features and benefits of this particular design. I think that's probably a knife that would hit it out of the park if they did a collaboration with Jourget, with Custom Knife Factory, to bring that price down and give more people access to that knife. He's a French designer, and, you know, over here in the United States or other places around the world, we're just not going to get the opportunity to experience his knife at the rate that he's making them. So this is a fantastic option for us. In some ways, I think this might even be better than the custom, but it's definitely cheaper and it's definitely more available, even if it isn't, you know, in constant production moving forward. I think it's definitely a knife that you should try to get if you can. I highly recommend it. It's a big knife, so it's understandably not going to be for everybody, and it's an expensive knife, which also is going to exclude it out of a lot of people's collection. But, you know, if you've gotten this far into the review, you're probably thinking in your mind right now, what knives can I move to try to get one of these suckers? So good luck on your hunting, and I hope you find one. And when you get it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I think it's fantastic. I hope this was helpful to you. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Instead of by hand, by Philippe. Philippe Jourget. Philippe Jourget.